The Working Artist Project is brought to you by Second Line Arts Collective. Learn how you can support at secondlinearts.org.
We're creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective. Moments in time, captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Working Artist Project. My name is Gregory Agid, and we have Mr. Darrian Douglas in the house. Darrian, how you feeling?
Oh, Greg, I feel beautiful, man. I'm the greatest ever. What can I say, Greg? How you doing?
Man, look, I'm glad you feel that way because, look, hey, you are the man. I'm not going to argue that as much as I want to. Oh, man, nice to see you, dude.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, man. Happy to see you too, man. Today we got a very special guest, Greg. It's one of my best friends up here in New York, man.
Killing.
Yeah, man. We played for several years at this church deep in Brooklyn, and he's an amazing composer, an amazing musician, and also most importantly, he's a really great person, man. Yeah, he grew up over in Connecticut, and he's been in New York for about 9 years doing his thing. He's interesting, man. I want to kind of get into this because before he decided to, go all in on the piano, he was working as a pastry chef.
Wow.
Also, he was a bodybuilder, and you, I mean, he was huge, man. I wish you sent me some pictures because it's kind of unbelievable when you see him now. He's still in shape, but he's skinny. He was huge.
I'm just so glad we're finally going to have our bodybuilding podcast.
That's right. Tonight's the bodybuilding podcast. Tonight we're going to talk about bodybuilding, baking stuff, getting girls, and his brand new record. I can tell you that. But without further ado, why don't we welcome Russell Kranes to the Working Artist Project? What up, Russell?
What's up, guys? Great to talk to you. I'm glad we're doing this.
I know, man. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, man. Me too.
Man, what did you use to bench press? Let's just get right into
it. At my best, 320.
Woo! Like you would do it like one rep, or would you do like a whole set?
One rep of 320. I could do like 285 for maybe four or five reps.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a big boy. I weighed 210 pounds.
I mean, Greg, for years, Russell was telling me he was swole, and I was like, yeah, okay,
I still got it a little bit, but not like before. Definitely not like before. But I'm 5'9", so like 210, 5'9". That's a lot to carry around on a 5'9" frame.
Yo, are there any parallels between bodybuilding and playing music? Because I know a couple of musicians who are deep into it.
Well, I think the thing that's definitely related, the common ground between the two is that it takes so much discipline to do it. Like I've heard so many people say over the years, like, oh, I don't want to lift weights because I'll get all big. Like, no, you won't. Unless you really do it with dedication, not much will happen. You have to do it consistently. You have to change your diet. You have to sleep a lot. I mean, it's really like a lifestyle. So I think the discipline that goes into lifting weights is parallel with music, because no matter how talented you are, you've got to shed your fucking ass off in order to get good. And then you'll feel like you've arrived for a second, and then you realize how much you don't know. And then you're back to the drawing boards. So it's really just the discipline, I think.
Mm. I'll tell you this, man. One thing that I've noticed as I like to work out. I've never been on your level as far as and all that stuff goes, but it seems like a lot of times in musicians, Greg, to answer your question again, and like extreme athletes have one thing in common. Only one thing in their life is together. And you know what I mean? Like when you see the gym bros are like, and it's like you go to their house, it's all fucked up. Like they mama hate them. Like everything in their life is in shambles. I know you guys have experienced. See, Russell knows.
I have definitely.
I totally agree with that. I was gonna say too, man. I used to think like that about shedding too. Like I never wanted to practice too much because I didn't want to get too good and become too good.
What do you play? Which instrument do you play?
I play clarinet and saxophone.
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
Yeah. We're just meeting.
Nice.
I was as the thing was happening, I was reading your bio and I was like, damn, you studied with Geri Allen. That's so sick.
Yeah, man. Speaking of discipline, she really was the teacher for me that I learned about, I learned what discipline was from working with her, because as soon as I met her and I went um, into Michigan, I played for her and she just looked at me and kind of shook her head and she goes, "All right, we got a lot of work to do." And she had me transcribe. I never wrote anything down, but she had me learn 5 Bud Powell solos in all 12 keys. And man, that is some work. I mean, that took me 2 years. It was 2 years of work, basically. And that was just one thing that I did with her. And when I would play for her, she would stop me. It really reminded me. I took some I've studied acting too, and it reminded me actually of what it was like to study acting, because as you're up there and you're in front of someone, an acting coach, they'll stop you at every moment they can when you're not in it, and she would do the same thing to me. She'd stop me. You're not focused. You're not focused. And it really affected the way that I lived, I think, because it made me much more detail oriented. I think having a strong attention to detail is the thing that separates the wheat from the chaff, really. The best people in any field, their minds are razor sharp when it comes to detail in the thing that they do.
Man,
Yeah, so she kicked my butt.
that's beautiful, man. How long were you studying with her?
I studied with her for I think 3 years, because I didn't go to Michigan for my first year of college. I went to New School for my first year in New York, because I got in and they gave me a sizable scholarship, and it seemed like the right move at the time, but it wasn't. Um, so I ended up then going there, and I was with her for 3 years, and it was an amazing experience. I didn't appreciate it at the time, to be honest. Um, I was a punk ass motherfucker back then. Like I had a shitty attitude when I was like 19. Um, but
You,
get
you
better.
you thought you knew everything. I feel like Russell, you one of those type of people that just was like, man, I know everything, man. I'm a bad motherfucker, Now you can tell me, Geri Allen.
I did have that attitude a little bit, and luckily, um, I'm malleable, because I was humbled over and over again. And um, there's this amazing Mike. I'm a big fan of. I like boxing and I love Mike Tyson. And there's this amazing quote of his that I heard recently on his podcast. Actually, it's not from his fighting days, even though I guess he is kind of fighting now. But he says something like, um, "Life is. I don't know. It's something about the importance of being humbled. Life is not." He says, "Life is not about being humble. It's about being humbled." I think that that's a lesson that carries on from the time you're born until the time you die.
As as a self-proclaimed motherfucker, um, you know, I'm a teacher. I teach at high school. Well, this is my last week at high school for a minute. But man, I've always been perplexed by the difference between kids who have that immediate, they seem to be in touch with being humble and have a deep sense of humility. And then oftentimes it seems to take, like, which kind of what you're saying too, like a little extra work to get to that point. Man, I'm just curious, like what is that experience like too? Like maybe not, is it like that you didn't want guidance from people, or what does that mean to you?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think one thing that's kind of missing in our generation versus previous generations of musicians is mentorship. Um, I don't really have a mentor, at least not in music. But to answer your question more specifically, I think that, well, I'm incredibly OCD. I always have been, and incredibly perfectionistic. And so I feel like I've always had this attitude of like I want to get it myself. I have to do this myself. And it was also, the way I was raised. Um, my parents were pretty tough love. And um, so I think I always had this sort of like I don't need help. I got this, this kind of attitude. And I think that there's some beauty to that, but there's also a time where we need help too. And I think that that's part of growing up and humility and just realizing, okay, I'm at a point where I need some help. I need some guidance. Let me go to someone who knows more than me, who can guide me.
Did you were kind of speaking that you were humbled by Geri.
Mm-hmm.
As a teacher, maybe I love this because again, like I feel like those are the hardest students to connect with, no matter how much as a teacher, like I want to find a way to break that barrier. And I'm wondering if was there like a moment that you specifically remember where you were like, oh, maybe this person is here to help me, or maybe this is what I need for my next step in growth.
Um, well, the beautiful thing about Geri was that as tough as she was also extremely nurturing. Like she would do little things. Like I remember I early on in my time with her, she said this was one of the more humbling things. She said, if you want to do this for a career, you have some serious work to do, fella. That's tough to swallow. And then I did a lot of the work. And then she said, okay, bring in an original. And I brought it in. And then she said, okay, now I want you to sing it. And I sang it. And she was like, you have such a beautiful voice. And I love your compositions. So she would pepper in just little things to encourage me while also humbling me. There was another thing, when I was in my first year at Michigan, Barry Harris came and I played for him in front of the whole program and tons of people, probably 100 people. And um, he ripped me a new one, man. He was like, you're good, but you're not original at all. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I'm 19. Like, what the fuck do I know? But he just kept kind of, he was relentless. He was absolutely relentless for probably 45 minutes straight, just kind of grilling me. And he would sit down on the piano to play some killing bebop shit and be like, you would never do that. And that it was a serious ass kick. And then I saw Geri and she was like, she kind of gave me this vibe of like, you took it on the chin like a man kind of thing, like this is good job. And so, and then there were other things too in that earlier, kind of formative years. Cause when I baked, most people don't know this because they think of like, oh, it's cookies and bread, but like, man, baking is a grueling job physically. It is absolutely grueling. When I was doing that job, I had an 8-pack. I was in the best shape I've ever been in my entire life because for 8 or 9 hours straight, you're picking up heavy things, you're pulling hot things out of the oven, you're climbing upstairs and putting 60-pound boxes up, one on top of the other. And the person that I worked for was a decorated pastry chef with 20 years of experience. And chefs are known for being, everything in Anthony Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential, about the intensity of a chef. That shit was all true. And he used to, if I made one little mistake, he would dish me out and yell at me. And so I had to really, really develop fine attention to detail. And that was extremely humbling too. I think it probably depends on the person, but for me, when I'm not perfect, that is enough motivation for me to get it together, But I think for different children, different students, everybody's different. Everybody learns differently.
No, for sure. This is an interesting conversation to have after our previous podcast. You should go
Oh
listen
yeah.
to it.
Yeah, I want to check it out.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because what you're talking about right now is mastery, and
Mastery.
I don't think our last guest was talking about that, and I expressed my opinions on it in the moment. But I think that, for instance, to be a Kobe Bryant, you know what I mean? To be an Anthony Bourdain or to be a Thelonious Monk, you have to be one original, and then you have to like painstakingly mold something into something that's beautiful. Because like when you were 19, you was playing some bullshit, and Barry Harris was like, "That's terrible," and like to me, that's love, and
Yeah.
that kind of right, that kind of feedback motivated you to say, "Okay, I gotta try to figure out how to make this better." That's extremely important, man. You know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's this saying, my good friend and roommate is from Morocco, and he taught me this actually just last week. It's like it's from Arabic, but it translates something into like uh tough times make good people, which creates good times. And I really feel like that applies, because it's like, okay, I'm stuck, like I'm trying to do well, but I'm not getting it right. And I need to be humbled. I need to be taught the right way. And I need to follow those instructions very diligently. Like I like, kind of the soldier mindset in a way, like let the person who knows lead you. And if you trust them and they're really knowledgeable in what they do, they will lead you to become the best that you can be, because they'll show you the tools that are already inside yourself. I really, I used to think about like doing art and even life is almost like um I'm forming a sculpture. But I think the truth, I see it differently. And I think the truth is more like there's already a beautiful sculpture, and that is you. You're just chipping away little tiny bits here and there, little tiny bits just to make it a little bit more perfect. And that goes on for the rest of your life. I mean, that's mastery in my view. But it's already there. Like the beautiful sculpture is already there because it's you. It's already been realized.
Darrian, where'd you find this guy? I love him.
At
Oh
a
man,
jam
Darren and
session.
man, Darren and I have had so many amazing conversations. I mean, I'm just meeting you, Greg, you seem awesome. Darren and I, we've had amazing conversations, and he has been an incredible friend through these years. I have to say, Darren is always fucking reliable. Even man, he's like, I remember he just had a kid, and like a week later, we're like talking and like, certain ideas out and everything. I'm like, man, this is a real friend right here. This is someone you can count on. And an amazing musician too, I gotta say.
Russell,
Amazing musician.
I
you
appreciate it.
know the best groove, fucking best groove. When we're in church, man, we used to take those people to church. We did for a long time, years.
Yeah, I want to talk about church, Russell.
Okay, we
I,
should. We
I appreciate what
Oh,
you just
come,
said.
come on, Darrian. Come on, man. We gotta change the title of this podcast to why Darrian Douglas is. Isn't that the first thing you said on this podcast?
Hey man, like I just try to tell the truth out here, man. But one thing, and people who are listening to this don't know this, but Russell is Jewish. He's a Jewish man from Connecticut, but I would say is one of the most spiritually in tune people that I've ever met, and also probably one of the, like, I don't know, soulful people that I've
thank
ever
you.
met. You know what I'm saying? And so we played at this church, Greg, that was not normal. It wasn't a normal situation, and I'm just gonna
No.
say it because people may disagree with this, but it was a church that was inviting for everyone, no matter your sexuality. There was all kinds of people. There's drug addicts, and there were gay people, and there were straight people. There was black people, white people, Latinos. There was like all kinds of people in this church who had real problems and who had been through real situations. And Russell invited me to play at this church. I'll never forget it. He was like, it ain't a regular church, man. He told me, and I was like, oh, it's cool, yeah. But you're not really prepared until you step into that door. And he gave me an opportunity to learn how to not judge people based on what they look like or who they sleep with or if they done some crazy stuff in their past. You just judge people based on how they treat you and how they feel. And that's why I say that Russell is soulful, because he's like, you just very welcoming and open. And I'm just curious, like, how you arrived there. Like, how are you free of judgment and just meet people where they are?
Um, I don't know. It's interesting because I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with that. I think it just kind of gradually happened, I think, through the years, because I grew up with only white people. Um, and then I went to college, and I remember my first black friend. I never had a black friend until I was 19. And then that led to my first Indian friend, and then that led to my first um, Japanese friend, and then gradually, before within a couple of years, I had many friends from many places. I'm also I'm an extrovert, tried and true. I'm not. There's no introvert in me, so I tend to make friends easily. My sister's the same way. Also, my sister and I are very close, and she's a social worker, and she is definitely very responsible for that too, especially in regards to, I think, having a different relationship with women than maybe some men do. I was also raised by women because my parents separated young, so I grew up really with much more estrogen in the house, much more of a feminine energy. Um, so there was that, and just being open, I think, to wanting experience. Because when I first got to that church, I could see that everyone had been doing that, singing gospel music for their whole lives. I could see that I was the only white guy there. I was definitely the only Jewish guy there, and I was the only straight guy there. But I immediately was like, I can learn something from these people. And I remember they invited me to a rehearsal. That was my audition, and it was just like, just play by ear. We're gonna sing, and I was born with a good ear, and I've worked super hard at developing my ear too through the years. So I did okay. I heard my way through all the songs, and then I talked to the pastor, who, we can talk about her, but she's an incredibly empathic and soulful person. And I said, I'll give you what you want. I can do that. Like, I know if I make the commitment to learn how to do this thing, I'm gonna get there. And she said okay, and that was it. And then I got the job, and that job changed my life because, I mean, I've seen a lot of people rant on social media about like going to music school. Don't go to music school. This is what you got to do, kids. Get a gig at a gospel church. You will learn 300 to 500 tunes in all 12 keys. If you play piano, you will walk bass. If you play drums, you'll learn dozens of different grooves. You'll learn all these different sounds and when to use them, and the emotion in the room. And oh no, now it's time for strings. Now it's time for flute. That is, and you'll make money. Hopefully, it's the best musical training there is. And then, just the fact that in church, especially a church like that, it's so affirming. Um, and Darrian, every week we heard the worst things. I mean, we heard, I remember there was a guy he left Jamaica because he came out of the closet, and his whole family was trying to murder him. They wanted to kill him. And so he was fleeing for his life, and he found our church. And there were stories like that every week. Someone's spouse died, someone has cancer, someone has HIV, someone was attacked, someone's homeless, And I think when you're around that so much and you're feeling the emotions of that, it kind of just, I mean, it's humility, but it also forces you to be empathic and say, oh, wow, these people, I'm no different from them. I'm no different from them. And if anything, I'm here to serve them, So that job, it's funny because I did that job for 6 years, and I feel like I graduated with a master's in social work from doing that job. I feel like I should have an honorary MSW because that was some social work, man, every week. And I remember talking to people afterwards too. They'd want to chat, and they'd say, oh, the music blesses me, or so on and so forth, or they just talk about themselves, and I would do my best Pastor Lynn impression to just be like, Mm, really? And I still use those tools today, like outside that. When I people talk to me, I try to
Yeah,
understand them.
I would say, besides the church that I grew up in, and I don't actually even know if Greg went to church, and we've been knowing each other for a long time.
Oh yeah.
That was the realest religious experience that I've ever had, and so much so that Pastor Lynn married me and my wife. That
I remember, yeah.
yeah, I just needed that. That was some high level spirituality happening up in there. You know what I'm saying? So
Man, can I tell a quick story that relates to this?
this is all about you, babe.
Oh man. 2016. I don't think you were at the church yet. I went to Ecuador, and I don't know if you told. I don't think I include this in my bio, but I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish fluently, and the reason is because I dated this girl, and anyway, I was in Ecuador, and I went to this town in the mountains called Baños, which means bathroom, but it's also basically kind of like a valley. And I got up. I was with my friend from college. He was living there. He was on a Fulbright scholarship, studying communication in Ecuador, and I went to visit him. And we got up at 6 in the morning, sunrise, and we went on this bike ride from the top of the mountain in the city all the way to the bottom, with the sun coming up. And that was, I like still feel it. And that was the closest. That was my deepest religious experience. But I remember feeling when it was happening, kind of, I thought about the church. And I remember when I got back, I talked to Reverend Lynn, our pastor, and I told her about it. And I told her how I felt God in there's probably like a few minutes. And she cried, and it was, and I did, and it was so beautiful. And I don't often really feel religious, but there have been moments where I have to just kind of tip my hat off, and that I say, okay, God, I see you, I see you. I know what you're trying to do, and thank you. And yes, I am grateful. Yeah.
Darrian, I love this guy. That's awesome. No, it's funny.
Man, I talk a lot. I'm sorry. I'm an extrovert.
No, like Darrian said, yeah, and Darrian dropped it in the most New Orleans way possible. It was like, all right, baby, it's all about you.
I know, Darrian, you're so New Orleans with your drawl.
But man, it's funny because you guys were talking about church too. Like, I mean, even within myself, like, I went to a Jesuit school in high school. I went to a Jesuit college. And, while I wouldn't consider myself religious, I definitely would consider myself spiritual. And as I'm listening to this, like so many things about you, I mean, this is literally the first time we've ever met each other or interacted at all. And I'm just kind of, there's so many parallels that I'm like thinking about, like things and experiences that I treasure within myself that you kind of seem to have also impacted you. And from like having a job, like I was having a conversation with our good friend Scott the other day, and we were just talking about musicians who've never had jobs.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know some of those.
Yeah, and we, I mean, we can dig into that for a second, but also like just talking about how you're having your experience with like meeting friends of diverse backgrounds, not just having white friends, or even like being in a church with just such a diverse group of people and experiences and stories. And as you're saying that, I'm just like, man, it just sounds so much a lot like my experience growing up in New Orleans. And I feel like all of those things are treasures in my life to make me who I am, and also gives me the ability to kind of like navigate this world very freely.
That's beautiful. Beautifully put.
Yeah. So as I'm hearing this from you, I'm just like, bro, that's like exactly how I feel.
Well, it's funny because sometimes I don't see it as a gift, sometimes I see it as a curse in a way. Because striving to be great is a lot of work. And the challenge in it and the beauty in it simultaneously is that it never ends. And just when you think that you've arrived, you're so far. You're so incredibly far. I mean, like, I feel like I go through this all the time, and then I start remembering all the things that I need to work on to get better as a musician. And I'm like, man, I'm going to be doing this till the end. But like Dizzy Gillespie, his last day, he got up, he practiced, and then he fucking died. Like, what a way to go out. That was the end for him. He knew at the end and his last days, he was like, you know what? I need to work on some long tones. That's beautiful.
Wow.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, with this idea of mastery and this continuous pursuit of it, I'm just curious, when do we know, as the three men that we are, when do we know when it's time to quit? Like, when is that? When is
What
it?
do you mean?
Like, for instance, you're working on a project or you're working on something. At a certain point, all right, I got to quit. I got this. It's time to close this chapter and move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? For instance, Russell, because I remember when you felt in your soul that it was time for you to leave that church, and we had that conversation. And I was like,
Yeah.
that was hard for you because
Yeah.
you love them, and also because, like you say, you're a perfectionist. But like, how did you know it was time to move on to the next thing?
Well, I was fucking, sick of the same. I felt like I had gotten everything that I could, and it was starting to feel too much like a job, and like it wasn't fun anymore. But I remember that I had felt that way a year prior, and this was actually a lesson that I learned from talking to you, was that, like, sometimes you think you're done but you're not, because the reason you think you're done is because you're not giving it as much as you need to. Like, it'll give back to you what you put in. And I remember thinking, no, I'm not done, there's more. Like, I'd lost focus, get focused again. And I'm glad that happened, because another year of it was the right move. And then it happened kind of perfectly, the timing, because, it was kind of insane, because the second that I quit, I got another church job. Like that week, out of thin air. It was miraculous, actually. It was really great. And I work for them now.
You had to get up out the universe way, bro. It's always trying to give you some new shit, you know?
But also, I think sometimes we don't decide when we're done. I think life kind of decides when we're done, I mean, life can change so fast. Sometimes it can change so fast. I mean, I think we want to be prepared for those kinds of things, because, before you know it, it's like, you could be, well, you're married, but, like, I'm sure before you were with Shadia, like, you didn't know when you first went out with her, okay, this is going to be my wife. You didn't know you were going to have a kid with her, and now you have a kid. And it's like, look how fast your life changed. And it almost wasn't even in your control. Like, it's something that happened to you, And I think that happens more than anything, is life decides for us when it's time to move on to the next thing. But then there's also financial necessities and obligations as well too. Sometimes we can't move on because we need the money. That's a big part of it too.
Yeah, I think too, like, just to throw in my 3 cents here on this one is, I think that's like the beauty of music too, is that, theoretically we all learn to listen, right? And in all great music involves listening and then reacting. And for me, that was always the thing that I took away from working with Alvin Baptiste, is he always, again, like, taught me to listen, taught me to react. And sometimes my reactions weren't correct, but it taught me to listen to the universe, listen to the drum set, listen to the bass player, listen to the piano player, listen to whatever. And at the same time, I guess when it comes to life, we are having these signals that are calling us to change, right? And it could be like, hey, like, maybe you get a water bill, it's $1,000, and you got to make some extra money, and then maybe you have to adjust according to that, or all the things that you just said too. Like we have to be willing and humble to listen to where life is calling us, and also be humble enough to accept that maybe the job as a baker is going to translate to some greater knowledge or experience that we can't see yet. And or the experience as a bodybuilder or a musician or whatever, time at a church, like all those things come back full circle at some point in our lives to serve us, and had we not listened and maybe not been so stubborn,
well,
in the same place. But at the same time, the paradox of that is like, we're all fucking stubborn because we're musicians, and there's how many times have we just been like, no, I can't hang out tonight, I gotta practice.
Oh man, so much still. Yeah.
So I guess to me, I love, like, we got to embrace the paradox, man, because in life there's no right or wrong and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes we have to know how to go with the flow, and sometimes we have to be stubborn. And
very, very true.
Hopefully someone's guiding us through those decisions.
Yeah, ideally.
Man, we haven't even talked about music yet. Or maybe
I know.
Maybe
all of this is music, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say all of it's music.
This is all music, yeah.
Why don't we take a second and we'll play one of your tracks here?
Sure.
Russell, this one is called. This is the one with Sam and them. What's it called again?
This is called Vivo Soñando, which is a Jobim tune, Antonio Carlos Jobim, which means in English, I live dreaming. It's one of his lesser known tunes, which is why we wanted to do it. And we did it in kind of a weird key as well. And the record hasn't come out yet. It'll come out later this year. But we made it in February, and we're working on mastering right now. This is mastered. Okay. So this might be the final mix that goes on the record.
All right, y'all, put your ears on this. All right, Russell, we can't give them too much of it, man. They got to go out and
yeah. No, it's good.
That's beautiful, man. Just choosing that tune, I think, gives us a window into who you are, really. you know, because it felt so sensitive and I don't know what was that? Why did you even choose it?
Well, I love um, Jobim. He's one of my favorite composers. Um, I'm a romantic, uh, and not in a sappy Lifetime channel way, in a real kind of like medieval, um, kind of like knighthood sort of way. I love literature from that era, and I love sort of that aesthetic. Um, and Jobim has that beauty, you know. I really love this book, um, Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I read that around the time I was first getting into Jobim, and the two kind of melded together, and I started developing this sort of sense of who I was in relation to that sort of stuff. And I started seeing like I'm a romantic person. I have this affinity for art and beauty and the sublime and spirit, and I love, you know, hard hitting stuff too. I mean, we do some of that on the record too, but that's a time and place, and I only like that at a certain time, and when it calls for it. I really like to explore dynamics and more subtle sounds, especially with the piano, because the piano is a you know, it's a lovely, delicate instrument that's meant to be caressed. You know, sometimes you got to hammer the shit out of it, but you know, there's also a time and place for really making it sing. And I was lucky to record on that piano too, at the studio in Brooklyn called Benny's Wash and Dry, and he really, the engineer Bennett Pastor, he really takes excellent care of that piano, mic'd it really well. Amazing engineer as well. Yeah.
When you play, what do you hope to translate to your audience? Like what like again, like what experience are you trying to impart for the people listening to your music?
That's a deep question. I think it depends on what the gig is. But I think probably generally it's, I know life is really hard, um, but let's all let's all be in this moment together and experience the 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 majesty of life, because it is also amazing in the midst of the suffering. You know, I even think the suffering is like the best part in a lot of ways. Um, and that sort of kind of like, and I really learned that from playing in this church that Darren and I worked in. I really learned it there, because when you know, looking at the faces of the people and seeing their suffering, you know, the things that a lot of those people went through, like I can't relate. I haven't been through those sorts of things, you know. um I think I really got from that this sort of understanding of I don't know, almost like this pretty aesthetic. Like let's all be sensitive here in this moment together and support each other. I think I really got that from church, and I try to bring that into secular music as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's there's a vulnerability that I think that I was picking up on in this particular song. You know, and I think musicians, we all like just playing any music is complete. Like I'm just bucket naked out there, just letting you see who I am on the inside. And but especially on a song like this, it's like, okay, I'm gonna really get vulnerable with y'all and like let's all get in here and maybe we're gonna all cry together. You know, maybe I'll tell you my deepest, darkest secret and we'll all take turns doing that. And that's to me like takes music to the and the life experience to the next level. Like you're saying, like the suffering is the best part because it allows your neighbors to be vulnerable too. And it allows them to express empathy.
Yeah.
And that's what makes life beautiful. if we can achieve that and
Yeah.
avoid judgment, right?
Well, it's a moment to moment thing, but the thing is, like, we're all, as musicians, we're all romantics. I mean, like, we can act macho and everything like that, but we're all sensitive people, because you can't play music and not be sensitive. It literally is, if you're doing it with other people, then you're being sensitive to what they're doing. And if you're doing it by yourself, you're being sensitive to what you're doing and what the other people around you are doing. Because sometimes you're playing for other musicians. Sometimes you're playing for people in church. I work in the dance world, so I work for dancers. They have a totally different aesthetic in what they're doing, specifically ballet. So that's something else. And that's a very sensitive sort of job, because they're doing these very elegant movements that I can't replicate. But in that elegance is sensitivity and the soul and romance. Yeah, all the macho stuff from that a lot of musicians, myself included, sometimes carry around. That's let's leave that in the gym, because, like, yeah, we're all sensitive. Us musicians, we're all sensitive. We have to be, to do this thing with any justice, which we do because we're all pros. you know
There's a part of me now that wants to bring this all the way back to you having a job. And
okay.
and the reason why is because you were speaking a lot about connecting with the audience and being empathetic to what, say life is hard. And sometimes as musicians, we have to consider that the music is not purely about an academic achievement or a musical achievement, but it is about creating that connection with people.
Yeah.
And and I've, again, bringing this back to the jobs and stuff like that. Sometimes I feel like those experiences give us the humility to realize that our work is not purely for ourselves or purely for the achievement of, musical greatness or whatever. But, when you're baking some bread, it's for people to eat, so they have sustenance to live. And the same thing with the sounds that you're saying, and the vibrations are there for the sustenance of life.
Mhm.
And so I was curious. So now, what having a job, what has that done to your perspective on life as a musician?
Well, it's interesting because you said, baking at it, this thing that people need. Nobody needs cupcakes. Nobody needs to eat cookies. They do it because it makes them happy. And that was something I liked about the job. I was like, you guys just, this makes you feel good. This is literally, I'm making like a drug for you, which is sugar and, you know, some salt and butter, fat, but having jobs was definitely good. I mean, there have been times when I've been here too, like in my journey in New York, where I've had jobs, like during the pandemic, because I didn't work for a year and a half, and I was dating someone who had a dog walking business. So I walked dogs, and that was an experience because I'd rather be doing music, but being surrounded by loving, innocent creatures that just want to, play and lick your hands is really, really nice too. And you're outside and you're getting fresh air and everything like that. Um, I've had a lot of jobs, man. Like when I first got here, I had a social work job working with kids in foster care. So I was like a life coach for kids, without parents. So I would spend, 6 hours, 8 hours with a kid a whole day that I didn't know at all. And we'd go around New York and just talk and have fun, um, and I don't know, I did landscaping and a lot of, like, physically intense stuff. I bar backed. I worked at Disneyland. I played piano there. I worked on a cruise ship. Um, I baristed. I've had to do a lot of different stuff through the years, and I think that it really was nothing but positive uh, for being a musician, because music is the best job. Even a shitty gig is better than most jobs. I mean, the thing with baking was, like, I mean, even if there's not a lot of people at your gig, no one's clapping when you pull 10 things out of the oven. So, you're not getting that much recognition for the super hard work you're doing. So I really appreciate doing music so much, because it's so gratifying. And I think having a real job, and you're a teacher, so that's a real job. Um, that will make you a better worker in general. It'll make you easier to work with and more cooperative. I think it'll make you much more of a team player, because it's not going to be fun a lot of the time. It's going to suck a lot, and you're not going to get the benefits and perks that you get from doing music, from doing a gig. Like, I remember so many gigs where people complain about the food on a gig. I'm like, motherfucker, you're getting free food. Like, are you kidding me? And like a pretty good hourly rate. Like, stop whining. Are you like, you should try working in a kitchen. Work in a kitchen for one day. Let's see how you do. Okay. Make eggs for rich people. See how you feel after doing that for a solid day. Okay. That shit is hard work. Okay. And you have to carry like 100 boxes that weigh 50 pounds each. Do that, So, I mean, I'm super grateful for having had those experiences. And I'm using, I'm open to, if something comes up again in the future that's not necessarily music related, if the timing's right, I would do it. I mean, up until the pandemic, I was doing a lot of, and even during the pandemic, I was doing a lot of translation work, Spanish translation. And I did some translation for a social services company, and I was doing some legal stuff, and that was unpaid. But before that, I was doing parent teacher conferences, and in New York City public schools, and I actually quite enjoyed doing that. But it's a job, and it doesn't pay well. And I think those experiences are really valuable, actually, for being a better person. I think being a better person can only help you be a better musician, really.
Absolutely. I'm gonna help you answer this question too, Russell, because
Yeah, please.
something that resonates with me and Greg and our organization is you don't adhere to the myth of a broke artist. It's
Fuck
like,
that.
yeah, you just don't even. It's like, oh, I'm not gonna be broke. I'm gonna go do these things. So, because we were having the conversation, like you say, you're working with ballet companies. You're doing church things. You're also playing other gigs and jazz gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're not like saying, okay, I'm just gonna be broke as hell playing at X club, and that's it. I'm just making this one thing. This is the only thing I can do with music. You think outside the box and say, how many different things? Who needs piano? Let me go do those things, because those things pay so much more money than making art music. And
Right.
so that's I think, in my opinion, that's one of those things that you get from when you do work, because me and Greg got the same fucking ideas. Like, okay, what else can I do? 'Cause I'm not gonna be broke out here.
Yeah, man. I mean, New York's an expensive town, and I like to live well. I like clothes, and I like, a nice old fashioned at the bar. I like to go on dates, and that costs money. And having a girlfriend costs money. And buying a house, which I haven't done yet, but I hope to do someday, that stuff costs money. I think it's really like, how can I do the thing that I want to do, which is for all of us, music, but also live well. I mean, that makes so much more sense to me than just being a broke artist. I mean, fuck all that shit, dude. Like, that's a fast track to a short life. And I want to live a long life, and have opportunities to do a lot of different things. So, like, I feel like there's some kind of sacrifice, because it's like, okay, well, you're not doing necessarily every gig you want to do, but you're doing well and you're making money, and that, it's more balanced. I think it's definitely more balanced. I mean, when I first came here, I definitely wanted to be that artist too, but very quickly, talk about humbling. New York City is a humbling place, and it will continue to humble you, on and on and on. And so, and just when you think New York's kicked your ass, they'll give you a little more shit, just like one more, just like jab to your nose, so, chew on that, motherfucker. That's how this place works. And money is fucking key. It really is. It doesn't solve all of our problems, but it makes life a hell of a lot easier. So, I definitely I hear that. Yeah. And I feel like you and I and Greg, I feel like you're the same way too. Like Darren and I have talked a lot about this, how like we're musicians, but we're also kind of just like regular dudes, you know? Like we like to just talk shit and like talk about girls and like have fun and like, talk about funny shit in comedy. It's like I'm a musician, but like I don't know, I'm not really a nerd, I'm kind of just like a regular dude. Like, dare I say, I'm kind of a bro, and I totally accept it. I'm totally fine with it. Okay. When I was in college, I partied with frats,
Oh man.
and I don't feel a little bit embarrassed about it. Okay. You need workout tips, I'll give them to you. You need sensitivity tips, I'll give them to you too. Like whatever. But I think we really value living well, Darrian and I both. And that's, I feel like some artists, maybe they don't need as much, or maybe they don't value that. Maybe as long as they're doing their art, they're happy. But yeah, that's for the birds.
It's
In my
funny
opinion.
because you mentioned musicians complaining that the free food isn't good enough or something, and that's literally what, like, that was the the diving off point into our complaining about musicians without jobs.
Oh yeah. Oh my God,
Yeah,
dude.
being
Yeah.
upset that they weren't getting fed on the gig. But yeah, I do yeah, I don't know what it is. I definitely don't want to be broke. That's hell no, man.
Fuck that.
You said that. I remember one time my dad said this, and this might be a point. Maybe I should go back to therapy for this. But he said that love doesn't pay the bills. And while I completely agree with you that money does not solve all problems, it does make life easier. you know,
Way easier.
and
Way easier.
yeah, it's hard out here, man. Even now, like, I've been transitioning between jobs, and I'm hearing about retirement, like people who are 20, 25 years, 30 years ahead of me, and they're fantastic musicians, and they're concerned about retirement and how they're going to financially make it and things like that. And so I think, a thing that Darren and I bond over a lot is that we want to set people up for that kind of success now, because we, as
Yeah.
musicians, we all have to address that sooner than later, and every day that you wait, it makes that much more challenging. and
Yeah.
and the thing is too, also, I want to preach this to musicians too, y'all. When you have financial options, that doesn't deter you from making great music or anything like that. If anything, I feel like if you can set yourself up, you can create music for your entire life. If you can do that into your 50s, your 60s, you can have kids and grandkids and a house and a mortgage and a car and still make music.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cats have been doing it since time immemorial.
Yeah, we
Miles was rich.
come on.
Yes, he was. Yes,
But
he
we going.
was.
Hey, listen, Russ, y'all. We gonna have to shut this down, man. Unfortunately, we have reached our hour, y'all. But
Wow.
before we go, Russell, we want to give you an opportunity to tell all the people where they can buy your body building T-shirts, belts, and shoes, CDs, how they can hook up with you online, and all those other things, man.
Um, I unfortunately am not super tech active. I mean, I have an Instagram and a Facebook. I use it a little bit to promote myself. I should do better. I'm in the process of getting a website together, but you can follow me on social media for now on Instagram. My handle's at Russ Kranes. The album, I don't know when we're going to put it out yet. Um, I would say probably around the end of the summer, and it'll be available on all streaming platforms. I do, however, have one thing up on all streaming platforms. Another song, the other one that I gave you, I recorded last year. If you type in on Spotify or wherever you like to listen to music, Dove's Peak, Doves space Peak. There's a song that I wrote the music and lyrics to. It's called Part of Your Life. It's myself and an incredible singer, friend of mine, May Chung, and she's singing. I'm playing Wurlitzer. So that's one thing that I have out for now. But otherwise, y'all are just gonna have to wait till the album comes out, and I'll be promoting it a lot on social media as the time comes near.
In the meantime, y'all find Russell on Instagram, Russell Kranes, Kranes.
That's right.
Drop him something in his DMs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Russell, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to
Absolutely.
both of you.
Absolutely, bro. All right, y'all. My name is Darrian Douglas.
I'm Gregory Agid.
And we'll catch y'all next time.